If you're in that perimenopause age range, you've probably heard that it's all about losing your hormones and just not making any more of them. But here's the really confusing part is that this is also a very common life stage to also be dealing with something called estrogen dominance. So which is it? Are we losing estrogen or do we have too much of it? And how can we possibly have too much of it when we're not making as much as we did before? And the truth is that it can actually be both. And understanding how that works might be the missing piece behind understanding your symptoms like bloating, mood swings, headaches, breast tenderness, and heavy periods. How do I know this? I am Christy, and not only am I going through this perimenopause ride myself, but I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner and I help women navigate perimenopause so they don't have to white knuckle their way through it and they can actually feel a bit more like themselves again during this life stage. And today I'm breaking down what estrogen dominance actually means, why it's so common in perimenopause, and how to support your body's natural balance so you can feel better and more vibrant in this life stage. Yes, vibrant is actually possible. So most women are told that once you hit your 40s or that perimenopause age range, estrogen just drops off a cliff. Like it's just completely downhill from there. But that's not really how this works. In perimenopause, hormones don't decline smoothly at all. They fluctuate. And in fact, not just fluctuate, they can swing so wildly. Some months estrogen might be sky high, other months it can crash and be in the tank. So the real pattern is actually not really one at all. It's more chaos. And that means spikes and dips and a roller coaster that creates many of those classic symptoms that women experience. And what's confusing is that a lot of those symptoms are also the same symptoms that can happen when estrogen production drops. So perimenopause actually means fluctuating hormones, not just low hormones. So what is estrogen dominance? It doesn't necessarily mean that your body is making too much estrogen. Certainly, some months might be a little bit more estrogen production than others, but you can still feel estrogen dominant during those months when your estrogen production is low. What it means is that you have too much estrogen in relation to progesterone. Progesterone is your calming and balancing hormone. It helps smooth things out, and a majority of it is produced after ovulation. So there's no surprise here that in perimenopause, when ovulation starts to get a little bit wonky because our ovarian function is starting to decline, then that makes sense why progesterone is the first of the sex hormones to start to decline in perimenopause. But that can be a really big problem because even if estrogen production stays where it's at and it's not even swinging around yet, not having enough progesterone to balance out that estrogen can cause some problems. Estrogen is beautiful. She is an amazing hormone that gives us a lot of life. But she also has to be reeled in a little bit. And that is what progesterone is there to do. So when we do not have enough progesterone production to be able to balance out estrogen, that's when things can get a little bit crazy. Think of estrogen and progesterone like dance partners. When progesterone steps off the floor or starts to give a little less power, estrogen has no one to guide her. So she starts bumping into things and creating chaos. And when estrogen becomes dominant, or when she's not being cleared out properly because too much is continuing to circulate, which I'll get into in a little bit, you might notice things like more bloating and puffiness, breast tenderness, painful or heavy periods, mood issues like mood swings or irritability, and sleep issues. That's one that I personally noticed first. Are any of these symptoms that play for you? Please let me know in the comments. I always love hearing your experience. And these symptoms often show up far before your period stops or starts to have some wonky patterns. And that's because the estrogen and progesterone balance is out of sync. And I want to be clear here too, there's some misconceptions about balance and some criticism when people say hormone balance. What I mean by hormone balance does not mean that they are at the absolute same level. They need to offset each other in some way. It doesn't mean that they are even. Just had to put that clarification out there. It's almost like they have to be in a symphony together. That doesn't mean that one isn't necessarily louder than the other at times, but it means that they are playing together nicely. So the other side of estrogen dominance, besides just a lack of progesterone production at that point, has to do with estrogen clearance, which is how your body is breaking down and eliminating estrogen. Estrogen is processed through your liver through detoxification pathways, and then it is excreted and escorted out through your gut and your poop. But if your detox pathways are sluggish, or if you're constipated, you're not having a bowel movement every single day, that estrogen can get recycled back into your bloodstream. Things like nutrient deficiencies, stress, alcohol, or poor gut health all slow this process down. So even if you're not producing too much estrogen, your body might be holding onto it. I also see this case a lot with women who are on hormone replacement therapy. Nothing wrong with that. That's a whole other tangent. But that can be why they are still feeling a lot of symptoms, is because they're just adding more hormones in without making sure that the pathways are working properly to remove it out of the body. So you don't always make too much estrogen. Sometimes you just can't clear it properly, especially at this age when our body isn't functioning like it was in the 20s. So this is where other functions might start to slow down and liver health might not be quite as strong as it used to be. That can also slow this process down. So how do we restore this balance and help prevent something like estrogen dominance from happening? The first one is to support your detox pathways. So this can be criticized some because people will say, well, the liver does this for your body. Yes, the liver does. But again, the liver is not quite the same as it used to be back in our 20s and may need a little bit more support. So making sure that we are eating nutrients that help support these processes can really make a big difference in making sure that the processes are working as they should. So things like eating cruciferous veggies like broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, these can help your liver metabolize estrogen. Protein is another really important part here. Protein is a huge support of detoxification pathways. So making sure that you are getting enough of it. So just another reason to make sure that we are eating enough protein in this life stage. Hey, if you've been finding this information helpful at all, I would so appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, or share it with a friend so more women can feel empowered and feel better in this life stage. There's so much confusing information out there. Thank you. The other one is to keep digestion moving. Aim for at least one complete bowel movement a day to support escorting that estrogen out of the body. So ways to make sure that happens, of course, is making sure that you are hydrated first and foremost. Giving your body the space to be able to have those bowel movements and relax every single day. Sometimes something like a magnesium citrate, which is actually a poorly absorbed form of magnesium, but is really good at bringing water into the bowels, thus helping the bowels continue to move, can be helpful. Also supporting bile flow can be really helpful here. So things like beets, hydration again. Also making sure that we have enough stomach acid and we're supporting our stomach juices before we start eating. So things like eating bitter greens or using digestive bitter spray in your mouth. I'll link to the one below that I love in the description. It can be really helpful in supporting everyday bowel movements. Now, constipation can be pretty complex. So those are some basic tips. I'm not saying that those are going to work for everybody, but they're great ones to try if you're feeling like you are not having a bowel movement every day. The next one is managing stress. Of course, chronic stress depletes progesterone. It can interrupt ovulation. It can also impact the adrenals, which during menopause become the primary producers of progesterone. So making sure that we're managing stress properly is really important. And that starts with sleep. Aiming for at least 7 hours of high quality sleep every single night is very important for allowing your body to rest and repair. Now, I understand if you're not making enough progesterone, that can start to be really difficult. I'll link to a video that I made on some of my favorite sleep supports that might be helpful for you. Sleep is also really important because your liver does most of its detox at night as well. So making sure that we are allowing that much time for those processes to happen is important in supporting your body to do what it is so good at doing, but we need to give it the space to do so. And you may have heard of some other different supports that can help support your body to be able to break down and detoxify estrogen. Those are things like DIM or calcium diglucarate, but always start with the basics first, which is real food, hydration, and blood sugar balance, because otherwise when you start to add in some of those supports, it can make it more difficult to manage when the foundations aren't steady. It can make it more like a moving target. I'll also link to a video where I go through those supplements more in depth to help understand if you might be a good fit for them. So the takeaway here is that you can still have estrogen dominance problems even if your estrogen production is starting to decline. It's the context that really matters. It's not always about losing estrogen. It's about learning to rebalance it. And the two biggest ways to do that is making sure that we are supporting progesterone production and making sure that we are detoxing estrogen properly. So when you support progesterone and you help your body detoxify and manage stress and restore that balance of that symphony of hormones in your body, that's when you really start to feel a difference in your hormones and feeling more like yourself again. And I shared a lot in this video about how progesterone production is such a key piece to balancing out estrogen. Here's a video on how to manage your body's production no matter where you are in perimenopause or menopause. All right, you got this, and I'm here with you every step of the way. See you in the next one.